If the military sends you overseas to an expensive country, it can quietly add over $700 to your paycheck every month, tax-free, and most troops have no idea how it is even calculated. And there is a catch buried inside it, one that can make this check quietly shrink from one payday to the next if you are not watching.
Liam, the shape of it is this. It is called overseas cola, and it exists because a gallon of milk or a tank of gas can cost far more in Tokyo or Stuttgart than it does back home, so the military evens that out with extra cash. It is not trying to make you rich just to keep being sent abroad from quietly making you poorer at the store. Think of it like a thermostat for your buying power, constantly nudging so being overseas costs you the same as being home.
Today we break down exactly how that number is built, why it is huge in one country and tiny in another, and the one thing that can shrink it overnight. By the end you will know how to read your own overseas check and never be surprised by it again.
And it is serious money in the right place. A mid-grade troop stationed somewhere expensive overseas can clear well over $700 a month in this allowance alone, entirely separate from what they get for rent. People see one deposit hit and assume it is all their pay when there are really several different checks bundled in there.
And here is the part that makes it even better. Every dollar of overseas cola is tax-free. That is a real difference from the stateside version of cola, which is actually taxed. So a dollar of overseas cola is worth more in your pocket than a dollar of the stateside kind, before you even factor in the size of it.
But this is where the catch lives. It is tied to the exchange rate between the dollar and the local currency, so as those rates move, your overseas cola moves right along with them, up or down, sometimes every single payday.
So here is the question I keep circling. Could the military be adding hundreds of tax-free dollars to your overseas paycheck on a formula that quietly changes underneath you every payday? Tax-free money for living abroad, and a formula worth understanding. There are free guides at military.professorerica.com. Now let us bring in some help and look at the real number. One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Professor Marchetti is joining us at the desk to help put real numbers on this. So let us start with the one that surprises people, the actual size of this check.
Liam, run them through what a year of this can actually look like.
Happy to take a mid-grade troop stationed somewhere genuinely expensive overseas, clearing roughly $700 a month in overseas cola. Add that up across a year, and you are looking at about $8,400, and the tax on it is zero.
And that is entirely on top of everything else.
Completely on top. It stacks over your base pay, and it stacks over your housing allowance, which is a totally separate check. So the same overseas assignment can be handing you 3 different streams of money at once, and this is the one people forget to even look for. It just blends into the deposit without anyone naming it, which is exactly how families miss thousands of dollars a year.
And here is the part I would underline. That 8,000 figure is a high-cost posting. Plenty of overseas locations pay a modest amount, and some, where prices are close to or below the stateside average, pay very little or nothing at all. 2 identical troops in 2 different countries can get checks that look nothing alike. It is one of the few pays in the whole system where your country code is the single biggest factor in what you take home. Your zip code back home barely moves your pay, but overseas your country can swing it by hundreds a month.
So the country you land in is really the biggest factor.
So the country you land in really is the biggest factor. If 2 identical troops overseas can get wildly different cola, what actually decides your number?
That is exactly what we need to answer next. So let us break down the 3 things that actually set your number. So if 2 identical troops overseas can get completely different checks, what is actually driving the number? It really comes down to 3 things.
Liam, lay out the three, because once you see them, the whole thing stops feeling random.
The first is your location cost index, where an average place back home is set at 100. Above that, you get COLA. At or below it, you get nothing. That single number is why Germany pays, and a cheaper posting might not. Get that one number and half the mystery disappears, because it tells you immediately whether you are even in the game.
And the second piece.
The second is your spendable income, which is just how much of your pay you are expected to spend on daily living, and that is set by your grade, your years in, and your dependents. A bigger family means a bigger figure to protect, so it scales up. A single troop and a troop with 3 kids do not spend the same on food and daily goods, so the allowance follows the mouths you are feeding.
And the third is the one that keeps moving.
The exchange rate, that is the live wire. The index and your income are steady for a while, but the dollar against the local currency moves constantly, so the office updates the payment to keep your buying power flat. When the dollar strengthens, your COLA drops, because your money already goes further.
So it is not the military being stingy when it falls. It is the math doing exactly its job, chasing that balance. And when the dollar weakens, it climbs back up, because now the same groceries cost you more in dollars. It is always hunting equilibrium. Professor Marchetti, let me hand you the real question. Once a family understands this, how do they actually be smart with a check that keeps moving?
One rule above all: do not build your monthly budget around overseas COLA. It is real money, but it is not a fixed salary, and if the dollar strengthens, that check can drop noticeably. We have watched families sign a lease or a car loan against a COLA figure, only to see the dollar rally and the allowance sink under the payment.
Liam, this is the part that saves people real pain. Walk them through the habits.
First, when you arrive overseas, check your leave and earnings statement and make sure the COLA line is actually there. Second, keep your command-sponsored dependent status current, because your family size changes the amount you are owed. A new baby or a spouse arriving in country can raise your rate, but only once the paperwork actually catches up to your real household.
And the third habit is the mindset one.
Treat this like a bonus, not like income. Bank it, use it to knock out a debt, or build your emergency fund with it. That way, when it rises, you win, and when it falls, it never touches your real budget. It is the single easiest way to turn a moving allowance into a growing savings balance instead of a source of stress.
And that is the whole point I want to land. The families who get burned are the ones who spent it in their head before it arrived. Treat the gross as a starting point, never the take-home, and this stays a clean win every time.
Professor Marchetti, thank you. That framing, that it is an equalizer and a bonus, not a paycheck to count on, is exactly what keeps a family from being blindsided.
Glad to help.
So confirm it posted, keep your status current, and save the surplus. If this helped you finally understand your overseas check, like the video and subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making these. Here is what I want you sitting with after this. If your overseas COLA can change every payday, are you treating it like a bonus or like a paycheck you cannot actually count on? Hundreds a month, tax-free, but never quite fixed. Check your LES when you land overseas. I am May, and we will see you in the next one. One honest look at that statement in your first month can lock in money you would otherwise never notice.